Well, hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to episode number 62 of the White Knuckle Podcast, powered by Ozonics. Undetectable, undeniable. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the White Knuckle Podcast. Today I've joined with me, of course, my esteemed co-host, Todd Prignitz. And on the other line, someone who doesn't need a whole lot of an introduction, Mr. Cuz Strickland. Cuz, Todd, how's it going?
I'm good. I understand it's raining up and you're dreaming of your shed hunt. We don't do that down here very much. So.
Yeah, man, it is wet and saucy down here. It's going to be a very, very nasty day out in the field, but it's going to be perfect because it's been raining about 24 hours here. So we've just had most of our deer. There's still probably at least a quarter to a third of them still carrying, but with all this rain we've had, everything's just going to be ideal to catch them in the field and in the timber. So I'm just dying to get out right now.
I bet you are. I took two of my grandsons out yesterday. We went on a little hike. They were out of school yesterday, and the youngest one's going to try to kill him a turkey this year. He's the only one that hadn't got one, so we went on a little scouting mission, and when they got back, they looked like I drug them behind my ATV in the mud. They were from head to toe. I posted a picture of one of them on my Instagram, and my daughter called me and said, "I'm going to send their laundry to your house." So it's a little muddy to be scouting for turkeys, but that's what we do while you guys are shed hunting.
Yeah, Todd's sitting in rain, and I'm sitting in probably somewhere between an eighth and a quarter inch of ice on most of the trees. Although it's melting relatively fast. We had a pretty good ice storm last night, which isn't good for turkeys, which is what we're going to talk about today. But before we get into that, if you don't mind, Cuz, tell us how last year went for you. Not just turkey hunting, but how did the year of hunting go overall?
Well, I'm going to start out with deer hunting because this past fall that's just wrapping up for me was probably the best one I've ever had. And I did not kill a deer. I'll take that back. I did kill one deer late over in Alabama, but on my farm, which I've had for about 12 years now, my wife killed her first deer on our farm by herself, which was
cool, man.
That was nothing short of a milestone. This deer down here, it's way different from what you guys deal with because it's just, it's different. It ain't like hunting in the Midwest. These deer are just nocturnal. There's so much. A lot of it's a geographic thing. You don't get to see it because the terrain is so thick. Anyway, I had this, what I thought was a 4 or 5 year old, nice 9-point, real huge body. Had him on trail camera, 100 times, always between like midnight, 3 a.m., that kind of typical whitetail. Yeah. I call them vampire bucks. Anyway, our rut down here starts right before Christmas, about the 20th, somewhere in there. It'll anyway start showing up in daylight in this one food plot here. It's a real tight food plot. And I was getting ready to leave, and I told her, I said, that big 9-point's coming out. You need to go down there and hunt. And lo and behold, my wife, who was born in Waukegan, Illinois, didn't know anything about hunting, looks at me and she said, "What wind do I need?" And I thought I was going to have to sit down. I said, "You need a south wind." And I was gone. I went to Illinois. I was doing some stuff with NWTF up there. And on my way home, I didn't make it in time. She shot that deer by herself, dropped it right there in the field.
Oh, my God.
Like I say, I don't know what it scored. I don't care. I hadn't scored it yet, but it was just a fabulous deer season. My youngest daughter killed one she'd been after on my farm for 2 years. And then the coldest weather we had down here got down to 20, which I know you guys are smiling at that statement, but that's pretty cold. That's pretty
It's cold for anywhere, really.
Yeah, and the humidity stays so high down here, it just wraps you up. It's really cold. And my 9-year-old grandson went out because I told him and his dad, I said, y'all need to hunt these next 3 days. High pressure moved in on us. It was really cold. The wind died down. And he stayed in a ground blind for 3 hours with a crossbow and killed a really nice 8-point at 31 steps. So I got 3 deer down. Then the other grandson killed one. So it was like the best deer season ever for me down here. So.
And you know, when you have your own farm and you're raising animals and you've been following, by the time somebody kills them, you really don't care if it's yourself or not, do you? It's just, it's such a rarity to get opportunities at those big ones that have survived all those seasons and have not only survived on your farm, but they've had to survive the gauntlet from, you know, my neighbors, and I'm sure you have neighbors that hunt as well. So it's special when you get one down, and it really, like I said, especially as you get older and you've had all the success a man could ever dream of in the field. It's just rewarding just knowing that you've kind of put together a family program that works.
It is, you know, I'm actually surrounded on 3 sides by a hunting club. And so it's my whole focus is on food, you know, and, you know, covering food and trying to keep them up in here. And it's not to grow them gigantic. You know, my goal's a little different than your guys, especially since I'm much, much older. My goal is to have maximum carrying capacity, because I got like a 6, a 9, and a 10-year-old, and I was like, I want them to be entertained. I don't want nobody's bringing an iPad. I want them to see deer. So and to have one get to 4 or 5 years old is a bonus. And so yes, it's our whole world revolves around, you know, food plots and growing corn and keeping the cover quarter straight, and it's very, very addictive.
Oh, I love it, man. I'm definitely feeling that myself. I can tell you that much.
Yeah. Well, it's different. I tell you, you know, I had girls, and I took them hunting. And the reason I took my girls hunting when they were little, I didn't want them to grow up to be some kind of famous hunter. They were girls. We went to ballet and we did all this stuff. But I wanted them, when we sat down for supper, to be able to speak the language, to know the lingo. And I wanted them to know where meat comes from. And, you know, we've kind of all grown together, and my youngest one, she'll still hunt a good bit. My oldest one, she'll come and hunt on Thanksgiving Day and Christmas afternoon, but their whole families hunt, and we share venison together, and it's just been a blessing. But you got to take them by the hand and lead them down that path, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, half the battle is just getting out there, and I know just with my wife, she's kind of the same situation, not exactly hardcore, but I haven't pushed on her. I've kind of always wanted her to, you know, have the passion for herself and not, you know, just go because I wanted her to go. But once you get them out there, man, that's half the battle. Once they, you know, get out there, smell the air, see the birds, watch the squirrels run around, and hopefully see some deer along the way, it makes it all worthwhile. But yeah, man, we're kind of along the same lines there. Sometimes less is more, I guess. Yeah. But
we got to do, you know, and I don't want to take you in a different direction, but, you know, I tell people, right, that if you just look at the numbers in deer hunting right now, there are hunting in general, it's a little depressing. You know, we've lost more than we need. So whatever we're doing up to this point ain't working that great. So we need to do whatever we can to recruit people. I told a story, the coolest thing I've ever seen, little project going. There's a guy named Robbie Kroger that's doing these things called Blood Origins. And this guy's story, how he got into hunting, is just phenomenal. He was in South Africa doing apartheid, and they had to move. His grandfather was a big hunter. Anyway, he's doing these short, I call them documentaries, and he did one on me. But I was telling him about things that meant a lot to me, and one of them was when my youngest daughter was like 6. We went hunting, and I was walking down this path, going down, and I just stopped, and I took a deep breath. I said, Lauren, you smell that? And she took a deep breath, and she said, no, what is it? I said, that's the woods. And I said, you can only smell that out here. And I thought, you know, that was a dumb thing. Anyway, fast forward 11 years later, she's now guiding a little girl from Camp Compass Academy, and I'm videoing. I'm just the photographer. And they're walking down a path. We're going to a thing, and she stops and does that same thing. And she asked that little girl, can you smell that? And I thought I was going to just sit down in the middle of that road and cry. I was like, she remembered that from 11 years ago. But that's kind of what deer hunting is to different people, you know. Not everybody lives in Iowa, you know. I mean, I follow you guys, and I love those big deer. I killed 2 or 3 really big deer, but it's more than that, and it's guys like you are spreading that message are gonna help stop the slide a little bit, I think. So,
well, that's one of the things that certainly is a buzz in the industry, and that's that we need to get more people involved, especially young people, and that's not an easy task. And you're absolutely right, concentrating on memories made rather than inches or any of that stuff, which is why I don't measure any of my deer anymore. I know Todd won't let us touch any of the deer that he shot last year because he really doesn't care what they score, but it's really about the not to take away from Patrick Swayze's line in Point Break, but it's more about the journey than it is about necessarily the hunt, and that gets lost. I think it gets lost in a lot of television, and I know that you've been in television cuz for a long time, but if there's one message we definitely want to get out there, it's that it's just go enjoy it.
That's it.
Yeah.
And I don't often stick my fingers in my suspenders about anything, but on our TV, you could rewind every episode we've ever done. Never been a deer scored on there, and it's just like it's always been about the habitat and the critters and stuff like that. But I always revert back to Gene Wenzel. The best interview clearly I ever did with one person was him. And he made a statement during one of those. He said, he gets a little aggravated with people calling it a sport because he said sports, that's baseball and football and all that. He said hunting is an instinct. Hunting and gathering is an instinct. It's just like breathing and drinking water. And to me, he's so right. He said everybody has that in there. And to be honest with you, right now, to me, it's the perfect storm because we have on 2 fronts. We have all these shows on absolute major networks killing caribou and moose and field dressing them, and everybody wants to live kind of part of that lifestyle. And politically, we've got the best Secretary of the Interior, the Secretary of Ag, all these people are pro-conservation, pro-hunting, pro-Second Amendment. And right now is the time to pounce. We need to figure, and you're right, it's a tough call, but we need to figure out what that secret sauce is and start spreading it around a little bit.
Oh, the relatability factor, I think in the industry in general, and this is not going against anybody in the industry. It's always a battle between business and doing the right thing for hunting when you're in the industry, because everybody's got to pay their bills and stuff. But
right,
one of the things I think that really makes a difference and why I'm so passionate, still passionate after all these years, just growing up in Michigan, having really hard hunting, but I didn't care. I just out there chasing and the opportunity to see a doe or a fawn. Like I could not get enough of it. And it had nothing to do with bucks because we didn't really have anything big up there. So there was really no hope of killing a big buck. But I think a lot of guys get into it for that big buck factor because that's what they see on TV. And I mean, we're just as guilty as anybody else, but they don't realize the number of hours and years of hunting that have gone in to, for guys to consistently kill those deer, even in places like Iowa. And I think, the expectations of just going out and slaughtering a Boone and Crockett caliber buck your first year, we need to approach the message differently because that only leads to guys being disappointed with the result, which is probably not a Boone and Crockett their first year. So I think just like what you said, I mean, I still get so excited about shooting does that we try to always put a huge emphasis on that in our shows throughout our seasons. And that's kind of for me, like my wife wants to bow hunt this year. And she's like, she wants to shoot a buck. She wants to shoot a buck, she says. And I'm like, honey, no offense, sweetheart, but one step at a time. I think a good first year goal would be to get a really good shot on a big old fat doe and get some experience underneath your belt and learn to harness that rush. Because with a bow and an animal standing 10 feet from you, it's a lot different than, standing in the backyard. So I tell you, that's where I always try to put a huge emphasis and excitement on just doe hunting, because that's far more relatable and approachable for most people. And, hey, if you want big bucks to chase, even in places like Michigan, it starts by, letting some of those spike horns and fork horns go and maybe put the trophy status on those does and make it more about that. I guess. I don't know. I've always loved doe hunting, and I think that's something that is a great way to kind of, I don't know, maybe start the younger girls off with goals of much simpler things, learn to enjoy hunting, and then worry about big bucks later on.
Yeah, and make it all successful. I'll take my grandkids fishing. If they catch a brim the size of your hand, it's a huge deal. And it's all about success. And then we went and ate it. And, it's don't overlook those little things. My perspective again is kind of unique because, and we may have talked about this before, but I did kill a giant deer way back in 1981, and I'm talking about back in 1981. There weren't a lot of 200-inch deer hitting the ground, and I didn't know anything about score. Yeah, I killed a deer that scored 209 and 6/8, and I didn't know anything about Boone and Crockett and all this. It was a giant whitetail, had 27. Listen to this. You think if the stars didn't line. It had 27 scoreable points. I was 27 years old. It was November the 27th. It was 27 minutes after 9. So anyway, I'm thinking it was divine intervention. Anyway, long story short, I had more negative things come out of that hunt. I don't have time to tell you. Like, I had a newspaper, a syndicated newspaper column shortly after that. A full 2 years after that, I wrote this story about some of the stuff that happened. One thing was the taxidermist that did it, he made a reproduction mold, and he was selling molds of this rack, and which kind of aggravated me because he wasn't giving me any of the money. Anyway, I write this whole story about how people are getting too enamored with antlers, and I mentioned his name, wrote this whole story about you need to calm down. Anyway, this guy sues me for defamation of character, which anyway, he got thrown out of court. And I heard these statements. I was working in a sporting goods store. Nobody knew Cuz or anybody back then. They were like, "Did you hear about that giant deer that got killed?" And I said, "I did hear about it." Well, he killed it at night, or he was poaching, or he did it on my grandfather. And it was like one of the most negative things that ever happened to me. And on the other hand of that, one of the most positive things is I spent 3 seasons, a week at a time, going to Wisconsin hunting on public land. Because one of my dreams, people think your bucket list is like a Dall sheep or a grizzly. Mine was to go hunting where I had to wear that patch on that tag on the back of my jacket with your license in it. Because I said, I would watch those guys and say, you know what, they're as passionate about hunting as we are. I need to get up in that. So I hunted public land in Wisconsin 3 different years in a row, and it was the most eye-opening thing ever. Let me tell you something. You don't know what deer season is till you go to a pub in Wisconsin on Monday night and Green Bay's playing. You want to see what deer hunters are like? And I had more fun with those guys because I learned that the recipes are different, the accents are different, but we're all the same. And everybody has a love for hunting, whether you're right. You may live in Michigan, and if you see a 4-point, it's a big deal. But you know what? If that guy buys a hunting license and he plays by the rules, he's my brother. And I want to make sure everybody feels welcome. That's kind of my bucket list deal now. So,
amen to that. And you're talking to a cheesehead on the other line there. You realize that because.
Well, I'm telling you, that was one of the coolest things that ever happened to me. Number one, hunting up there where I hunted, it was tough duty, and I was probably middle 50s, late 50s by then. And then you had to when you took your tree stand stuff in, and we were videoing, so we had 2 of everything, including the camera. You'd have to tear it down, bring it back out. And after working like that for a week, I have a whole new appreciation for what those people go through on public land. It ain't like in a food plot down here in Alabama on private land and 20 deer coming out at 4 o'clock. It's different.
Jason can talk on it, but it's really making a revitalization. Jason can talk about that. You had a heck of an experience in Wisconsin this year, didn't you, Mr. Science?
I did. I had hunted the same property. The guy that owned it and eventually sold it to me, and then I ended up selling back to him. That's a whole long story. but I had hunted it since I was 12, and he was my fourth grade Sunday school teacher, and so I've been hunting there forever. And it just, because of stuff, it just became apparent to me that, maybe I ought to try a different challenge or something like that. So I think it was a podcast guest who sort of took a shot at people that hunt on private land, and I said, I'll do public. So I did exactly, and I've been sort of dying to have this conversation with you because I watched your show, whether it was hunting in North Dakota or hunting in Wisconsin, and brother, I feel your pain.
Yeah.
I hope my wife doesn't listen to this, because if she knows the amount of gas money that I spent just going from a hunting area to hunting area, she would flip. But it was great to shoot a deer, and I wish in some ways you would expect from the outside looking in that that's the pinnacle, but it's not. It wasn't. It was just the work that I put in. Man, I put 100+ hours into scouting all the different areas. And prior to you getting on the line, Todd was, I shared my screen with him. We were looking at an Ozonics map of all the spaces, and Todd saw all the little, waypoints that I marked, which were hunting areas. And, I scouted all of those, and yeah, it was just a ton of fun. And it was the most rewarding deer that I ever shot. And I don't want to take anything away from the animal itself, but it was the journey. It really was. I'll never forget just everything that I went through. It was awesome.
Well, I think we're losing that a little bit. And, my goal is to go on public ground from time to time while I can still physically do it. My North Dakota hunt was nothing short of fantastic. We didn't, I literally was seeing 20 deer a day. And I didn't see any, big rack bucks. So I shot a doe, a 166-pound doe the last day. But
wow,
it was one of the coolest things ever. And I love sharing that because I hear it a lot. We launched our first TV show in 1994 on TNN, which was a huge audience. And been in the TV business, and you'll be standing around, well, you guys just get to hunt all this special public, private land. And I hear that, and sometimes we do go to great places. I grew up hunting on public land. It's called the Homachita National Forest. But if you saw a deer track out there, it was like when you saw a turkey track, you didn't tell anybody. You went back and just like scratched it out with your boot print. You didn't want nobody to do it. So I've been there, lived it, and wanted to share some of that on television. And it's about the journey, but it's the people. It all boils down to the people. They're all the same. They're all great. Hunting is a cult. It's almost like everybody knows everybody. And I don't care what you use. You can use a 6.5 Creedmoor that shoots 2,000 yards, or you can use a recurve. It doesn't matter to me.
Yep.
It's just like the fact that you're out there doing it. And, hey, just do whatever makes you happy. That's the main thing.
Just enjoy
Absolutely.
it. Do you?
Yeah.
Dude, I think it's perception or perspective. And Jason got perspective hunting public land this year. I think probably like at least for a hardcore season for the first time. I grew up hunting in the same way. It makes you appreciate hunting a food plot on a really nice managed property so much more than if you were if you grew up in that environment. And I think a lot of the shows you watch, people who are killing really big deer consistently, they grew up doing it. And so they have good land. They have an opportunity to do it. It's much harder to start from scratch, but it doesn't matter. The goal is to be out learning something every day, and you can be doing that on public land. And that's what I've always enjoyed, just the education. And I tell you, nothing hones hunting skills more than hunting on public land and having to hunt around people while you're trying to kill any animal. It certainly makes a mature doe, a big time trophy when you've got a bunch of other yahoos running around the woods and making it a little bit more challenging. You could put it that way. So it's all in perspective, man.
Yeah, that's the difference in going to grammar school and graduate school. Public versus private ground. I can promise you that.
Yeah, man.
Well, if you ever want to come back to Wisconsin again, you let me know. We can. But you're going to be hunting a little bit different terrain than you were the last time you were here.
I was down near that Clam Lake and that area down in there, and
you were way up north.
I kind of got into some of that kind of wilderness type, giant fir tree. And buddy, let me tell you something. You got to have an A game up there. I don't care who you are. That's tough. And those guys go at it just like, there's a deer behind every tree. And I left there with nothing but a very humble feeling of admiration for those people. So it's kind of a life-changing deal for me anyway.
That's like Cooner country right there.
Yeah, we've had a guest who's become a friend of mine and a longtime friend of Todd's. He actually, you ran into him or got to know him through Lone Wolf, right, Todd?
Yeah, many, many years ago, like 20 years ago, working the trade shows, and he was just the nicest, most humble dude you ever met. And then back then when nobody had phones, so he would bust out his photo album. Well, Brad's old school, so he still uses the photo album deal. But you see some of the bucks he's killed on northern Wisconsin public land, big woods, where he's hunting tens of square miles for one, to find one good buck. And that guy has killed some absolute world-class deer up there. Some 200 plus inch type animals on public land. And he's crazy, but he has a completely different approach that he's learned to be successful in that type of a scenario. But that dude covers some serious distances every spring looking for that one track. And I mean, the guy doesn't use trail cameras or anything. He follows 100% by sign, big old buck rubs, signpost rubs, and tracks. And that's how he tracks his animals. But that's a whole different world than what we have down here in Iowa. Thank the Lord that I'm down here in Iowa now.
Yeah.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah, you should be. I don't know. That's kind of a young man's game. But anyway, the main deal is just getting out there. And like I say, it's whatever you want to do. I did a podcast earlier on hunting turkeys on public ground. The guy asked me, had I ever done it? And I was taken aback. I was like, dude, that's what I grew up doing. I did something last year. They're fascinated that I would actually go try that. But if you get a little laxed in your approach and your tactics, you go do that a little while, you're sharpened right back up, or either you'll quit doing it. There's you gotta have a little bit different game. But that's kind of what the average Joe or Jane deals with. Most of them do, and we forget that sometimes.
Well, that's the perfect segue into our intended topic for the day, which was turkey hunting. And one of the things that I'm going to be faced with this year is just that. Public land hunting. I do have a new farm that I've got access to. I don't know whether it's going to be any good for turkey hunting just because it's going to be getting logged. So I'm not planning on it, but I've got a bunch of other places to go. What for a guy that's bow hunting, and is used to bow hunting on private land, what's the tip that you would give somebody like me who's going to hunt with a bow, not have the luxury of knowing that the turkeys are going to fly down into the 11-acre cornfield, and if three of us sit on three different sides, one of us is going to get a shot because that's all out the door. Where do I start?
Well, I hear you, so I'm not going to spend 20 minutes trying to convince you to put the bow down and pick up a 20 gauge. So we'll move on. We'll move on to that.
Yeah, right.
I think we did that before. Because I feel like God built and designed turkeys to be shot in the face with number 5s, but that's okay. I'm a bow hunter at heart too. It's 99.9% of all I've ever done, except with turkeys. Now I went through this stage where I was going to get one, and I did. I killed an Eastern, I killed a Rio, and I actually killed a turkey in New Zealand with a bow, but I got over that. But anyway, it's come a long way. Back when I did it, I took a fish hook, like a trot line hook, and put it on the end of right behind where the broadhead was, and fasten it to the shaft with like 4-pound monofilament fishing line and super glue to slow the air down. I wanted the air to stay in the turkey. That was your method back then, because we didn't have mechanical heads and stuff like that. But one thing that hadn't changed, and it won't ever change, is it's all about the draw. I saw something at the NWTF. If I was going to go back and hunt turkeys with a bow, I'd do it with this. And it was simply a thing that screwed in where your stabilizer was, with like a 6-inch across by a 12-inch slit where you just hide behind it. That's the deal. It would hide your whole draw. Now, you still had to get your butt about a foot up off the ground, which would mean carrying a little stool or something like that. But when I saw that, I was like, I could kill a turkey with that, because it's all about that drawing motion. It isn't about killing them with the broadhead anymore. Those giant mechanical broadheads will kill them. It's not the thing. It's the draw. If I can give you any advice at all, it's to lighten your load and stay as mobile as you can, so you can up your chances for opportunities. If you don't have that, they come to that corner of the cornfield in the food plot, pop up a blind, put out 9 decoys deal. You need to stay mobile and up your chances for encounters, because at some point, the more encounters you're going to finally have that encounter with either that dumb 2-year-old or something terrain-wise that puts everything in your favor, because drawing that bow on the turkey is the hard part. If you get you something that's lightweight that you can put in, and I'll try to find that and send it to you. I don't remember the guy that made it. It was a company. But the more encounters you can have, the more success you're going to have. And as far as having encounters, to me, it's about locating them. And we can talk about locating turkeys until dark. But I have my own thoughts on that. I'll be glad to share them if you want to go into that. I don't know if we have time or not. Here's my thoughts on locating. Now, say, we all want that roost hunt. The reason you want the hunt on the roost is they're more vocal. They tend to gobble more on the roost and all that. And, just to get the record straight, the reason the turkey gobbles at all on the roost is he's calling the hens. The hens fly down, they go to him. He's wanting to call every hen within a mile. That's why he'll gobble, especially when they're undisturbed a little bit. But that's the good part. He's going to gobble to get the bad part is, a lot of other hunters can hear that, and all the hens can hear that. So when he flies down, you're going to be dealing with group. You got a lot of hens in there. So the first year I did the Primos video, The Truth, which has gotten to be a cult film almost. I think I filmed by myself 15 or 16 kills, and I think 3 of them were off the roost. All 3 of those were on extremely private property. The rest of them were that 9:30 to 11:30 noon kind of deal, which is, to me, the maximum time their windows are open. I think it's all about opportunities when his window is open. And you're saying
because between 9:30 and 11 is your favorite time to catch a big gobbler cruising?
Yes. I mean, you can go, I don't care if you're in New Jersey or New Mexico. You have the roost hunt, which can be great depending on where you are as far as hearing stuff and seeing stuff. And when they fly down, it's like they went in a cave. Everybody has the lull. I don't care if you're in Texas or Tennessee or wherever you are, there's a lull. It happens shortly after fly down. It goes on for whatever, hour and a half, 2 hours, 2.5 hours. And then, especially as the season progresses a little bit. But what happens, the gobbler breeds that hen. She's going to breed every day to fertilize that egg, and then she's going to sit on that nest, do whatever. And at some point, and they love to strut. I think sometimes they just do it to look at themselves. But all of a sudden, he realizes, hey, there's nobody here. There's 2 hens way over there. So that's when his window starts opening up to respond to another hen. It's hard to call one away from, 20 hens when he flies down off the roost. I know you'll hear guys say, but I have a magic call. Well, I'm going on the record to tell you there is no magic call. I've been with the best in the world. That does not exist. There's luck. There's sitting in the right place, and they happen to drift that way. But anyway, get back to locating. When that window starts opening, I think 90% of the people that are hunting pass by those turkeys and never knew they were there. Because here's the routine. a guy will pull up there and he wants to find him with an owl hoot or a crow call, because if they gobble at that, it wasn't a turkey sound, and they're not going to start moving your way. That makes perfect sense. Well, he'll owl hoot, and he'll blow that crow call kind of moderately. Then he'll blow it as loud as he can. Then he'll move on. Well, I'm going to go ahead and yelp at him, and he'll yelp at him kind of soft and get a little loud. But at some point, he's going to end up with the loudest locating turkey, crackling, loud panel box, whatever. That's where he's going to end up. He's going to be cutting on that box call or with aluminum slate that's going to reach as far out as he can. My thoughts are 100% different from that. I'm hitting him with the best thing I got first, right out of the gate, because to me, he's out there moving around all morning. He's hearing clucks and purrs and tiny little yelps, and crows are flying, and it's like a rubber band. And every time he hears those sounds, his rubber band kind of unwinds a little bit. Well, the whole purpose of that is to get one to shock gobble. That's an anointed term in turkey hunting. Well, okay, I'm gonna get him to shock gobble. So I do it with a tube call. I can do it with a slate, but I'm gonna give him 2 or 3 of them loud pop pop cuts, and it's like he gobbles at it. And sometimes you can almost tell he'll gobble and shut it up like, gummit, I didn't mean to gobble at that. I shocked him into gobbling.
Okay.
I hit him with something he hadn't heard in a long time, and he gobbled at it. Now, a lot of the time, if he's with hens, he still ain't coming, but at least I know I heard him. I may have gotten direction on him. Now my patience level goes way up, because I can ease over there. I know they're around that hollow. I know they're down in there. Now I can kind of formulate where I need to sit, how patient I need to be. I know they're there. I'm not going to go sit by a clover field and yelp every 30 minutes for 3 hours. It just ain't happening. And guys that do that can be really successful, but you know what? That's how I deer hunt. And I ain't turkey hunting like that. If his window's open, I want to find him. I want to know where he's at, and I want him to answer to me. Now, a lot of times he won't answer you that second time or that third time, and your chances are diminished. But if you can get him to gobble at one time and get in there and take the time to find a really good place and start making some really cool turkey sounds, scratching in the leaves, clucking and purring, you may turn that whole bunch and get them toward you. So to me, especially if I was going with a bow, I would be light down to tennis shoes, whatever I need to cover as much ground, and have a great locator call, and then something I could finish with, whatever you're the best at yelping with. I'm assuming if you're bow hunting, that needs to be a mouth call, but that would kind of be my advice right now for the bow hunter.
That's awesome. It's kind of like my approach for whitetails, and you just said it's hilarious. I'm sitting there, I'm like, man, my favorite part of turkey hunting is having fun and just relaxing in a ground blind and not really having to worry, because I don't take it that serious. Yeah. And because during deer season, I'm like going after them, So yeah. That's what makes it awesome. Different strokes for different folks. But Jason, are you going to have a camera person when you're out turkey hunting much?
If anybody's listening and is available, I will.
Otherwise, you could use like a Tacticam or something too if you were just self-filming if you needed to get mobile. Right. Yeah, I've got all of those. I'm just curious because you mentioned this device that you saw at the NWTF. Was it like a fan, a turkey fan?
No. It was a square blind, and it was one I saw designed pretty good because it would cover up the top and bottom limb. It was about wider, maybe 6 inches wider than your shoulder. Okay. And it folded. It was like a stabilizer, and when you sat down, you grabbed it and it folded out. Boom, just like a fold-up blind, but it was just almost a square piece in front of your bow, just enough to hide behind, which I love. It's like I say, if you're going to take a video, I put him in a ghillie suit. Turkeys are easier to hide from sometimes. Tom Kelly, my hero, who's 91 years old now, one of the passages in his book, he explains the difference in turkeys and deer. He said, a deer sees a man, he thinks it's a stump. A turkey sees a stump, he thinks it's a man. So that'll give you an idea of how slick, how slick they are. So hiding behind something, if you got to draw that bow, to me, would be imperative. Now, you may go out opening day and just sit flat down on your butt and draw on a turkey with a 12-inch beard. Chances are that ain't going to happen. You kind of got to hide that bow movement. It's not the silhouette of a person that scares a turkey. It's a movement, because you got to understand the reason they're so wired is because not only are they dodging coyotes and man and bobcats and all that stuff, they also have predation from the air. Every hawk, owl, eagle, everything's trying to eat them round the clock. So they're a little more wired, believe it or not, than a white-tailed deer. So that's that movement is going to get you some.
Now, Cuz, would you use a decoy in that type of a setup?
Well, it depends. I'm not a big decoy guy, especially in the woods. They can be just absolutely devastatingly effective out in fields and stuff like that.
Okay.
I use one when I like opening day of youth season this year. I'm taking my youngest one, which is 6, and I've got a taxidermy standing Jake that I think has worked better than anything. It's just a Jake, and he's not fanned out. He's got a little beard, about 3 inches long, and I've never had anything but really good success with that, because if you're going for a long beard, that seems to aggravate them a little bit, but it doesn't take a 2-year-old turkey and turn him the other way. I'm pretty light when if I'm lucky enough or blessed enough to be able to go turkey hunting by myself, I don't have much of anything. I got a 20 gauge now. I carry 2 or 3 rounds. I got that tube call that I do all my locating and stuff with, a couple of mouth calls, a bottle of water, and that's it. My daughter had me do what she called a vest dump. I got a YouTube channel I'm starting. She said, you need to dump your vest like they do a purse dump. I said, Lauren, I'm telling you, people are going to be disappointed, because I just don't carry much stuff, because sometimes I like to cover ground. And when you get to my age, you don't need to carry. And I go with guys, their turkey vest will weigh, I'm telling you, will weigh 40 pounds. They got three box calls and 3 slates and 2 thermocells, a quart of water. They got 5 decoys. And I'm like, really? I can't believe it. You need to find what you're really good at, what you make that best turkey sound with, how you're able to hide. I always carry a little pair of shears for me, because I'm pretty big on snipping the small limbs, sticking for anything to kind of hide behind a little bit, but staying pretty mobile and not getting centered down to one spot. If I'm liking one thing, and I'm sure I am in turkey hunting Hall of Fame status, the patience thing kind of wears on me, because if I sit there, half an hour, I'm kind of done. If you know what I mean. So.
Okay. Well, a lot of people can relate. I mean, for me, it's always the confidence factor, and know enough to know, enough to know when you need to stay put and not move. And I think, at least for myself, that's where I've always suffered, because I just don't have the experience with turkey hunting. But I know one thing, from now on, I'm going to be talking whoever's turkey hunting with me, like Eddie coming up, that, hey, we need to sleep in, because Cuz said 9:30 till 11:30 is the time we need to hunt, and not at the first light. So I'm with you there, man.
I'm just going by the math. That first year I was like, and I got to thinking back of how many hunts actually happened. Really, one of the best turkey hunters I ever go with is a guy named Bob Walker, and he's a guide down at Bent Creek Lodge. And I wrote a chapter, and I got 3 books on turkey hunting, which is like 90% humor. There's a little how-to in there, but one of the chapters, and I think it's book 2, was called Murderer's Row. And it was about the guides at Bent Creek Lodge. This place is huge, 50-something thousand acres. But all these turkey guides, they have to hunt the same block of land every day with a client. Well, that's just like hunting public land. Mm-hmm. I mean, you're going back and going back. Well, Bob Walker, number one, he's got the best low-impact skills anybody ever seen. I don't think I've ever seen him set up on a turkey while it was on the roost. He'll stand back. He knows it gobbled in the tree, and he waits and waits and waits till they get down, and he gets a direction. He said, all right, they move to the west. Boom, we're back out all the way around. That's his style, and he's real, real good with it. And usually by the time you get on that turkey with Bob, it's later in the morning. But your chances of killing him are really good. Down south, Well, I don't care where you hunt. It's just people. If there's a couple of mistakes I see people making all the time. Not that I don't make them. I get humbled all the time. But one is trying to get too close, and especially early in the year before the foliage comes out, because they like, oh, he's up on that ridge. I know where I can get. Well, think of it like this. That turkey can see, I think it's, 50 times better than you and I. He can hear 70 times better. All right, say you could hear and see 50 times better than you can now, and you climbed up 120 feet in a giant pine tree. How far could you see somebody coming or hear somebody coming in the woods? It's so hard to get in on a turkey on the roost. It's got to be like the perfect recipe, and it doesn't happen that often. I always see people trying to get in too close. And they may not spook the gobbler. They could have spooked the hen and didn't even know it. She pitched and went away, and now the whole flock's going to fly down toward her. So it's those low impact skills mean a lot, especially early in the season.
It's interesting. Every time I hear you describe a scenario, I instantly go to whitetails and like, yeah, that's my strategy is going 100 miles if you have to, but just sneaking in, taking your time and being patient. It's one of my favorite things to do. So that's my easiest way to become a better turkey hunter, is to at least associate it to deer in some way, shape, or form, because I'm still trying to learn. But I've been watching, because a Bachelor group, I don't know if that's what you call turkeys, but a Bachelor group of turkeys that are the biggest toms I've ever seen. And I remember a couple of them from last year. They got to be the same group, because they're just a bunch of studs. How long do a bunch of toms hang around each other all year long, or is it just particular times of year when they feel like more threatened because it's like winter, more stress or something?
No, they're going to separate for the breeding thing. I got an interesting story I'll tell you. But back where I'm from, where I was born and raised, southwest part of Mississippi, they had a state park just right outside the county line there, Natchez State Park. And it was no hunting allowed, no nothing. And it was just loaded with turkeys. And the year after I did the video for Primos, I had this new fancy SVHS camera, and I actually got a remote microphone where I could plug the mic in and throw it away out there in front of me so you couldn't hear all the scruffling. I said, I'm going to the state park and get some audio, because those turkeys were everywhere out there. So I hear turkey, then I hear 2 or 3, and I get down in the spot, and I'm right across eye level from the ridge where all these turkeys are roosted and gobbling. And this was like before, right at dawn, and I think there was 16 or 17 longbeards roosted on that real long finger ridge. And I videoed this off and on, and I stayed there and by 11 o'clock, there was one that was strutting. I actually witnessed them getting their pecking order straight in one morning. It was unbelievable, but they're just like deer. It happens really quick, and they'll get back together really quick, but at some point, they're going to break off, and you'll have some satellite 2-year-olds and stuff like that, but their dominance and who's the breeder will be established at some point, and it does not take long at all.
Crazy, man.
So when you're going out, I guess in my experience, in Wisconsin here, in the property that I've hunted in the past, which is the only way I have to gauge, what I'm going to do in the future, I'd have sometimes, 5, 10 jakes and 3 or 4, maybe 5 adult toms roosted in relative close proximity to one another. One of those is going to be the breeder, is what you're saying, correct?
Yeah, most likely.
Okay. One. So are the rest of those going to just typically follow along with that breeder, or are they at 9, 10 o'clock whenever you gave Todd approval to sleep in, because he loves to sleep in, is that when they become more killable or susceptible to calling them in?
Oh, yeah. I mean, absolutely. I'm no biologist. I think some of them will move away from that area and find their own group. And to me, it's just like that in nature, like elk hunting. You hear them talking about satellite bulls. They'll call this little 5x5. They'll call this 5x5 in, and, that's not the big bull. And all. It's the same kind of deal. And a lot of times those 2-year-olds come in silent. because if he gobbles and a big turkey hears him, he may pay a price for that at some point during the day. They have, to me, turkeys have, and not just the gobblers, the hens too, they have the most distinct pecking order of anything I've ever been around. They know exactly who's in charge and who's not. And that's why when you see, a lot of times you'll see a big turkey get shot and his buddies are there, they'll jump on him and just start beating the fire out of him because he's down. There's my opening.
Yep.
It's an intense 6 weeks or however long that breeding cycle is. But yeah, they usually, I don't think they go that far, but that's why you hear them talking about, man, sometimes they don't gobble, they come in quiet. Well, the reason the big turkey ain't gobbling is because he's surrounded with hens. The reason the 2-year-olds ain't gobbling much is because he's in earshot. It's not that they're scared to gobble, it's just, they just won't hardly do it sometimes.
So when you,
sometimes it's better to fly under the radar, so to speak.
Yeah, absolutely.
So when you come across that rare occasion at 9:30 in the morning, when you're getting one to answer you, you probably got one that's callable, right?
Yeah, I think it's one of those. Here's the deal. And my tube call's a little different because you can hear it so far away. But if I can get him to answer me like 2 or 3 times in a 10-minute period or something like that, my interest level's peaked at about 100% then. It really is. Then I'm going to sit there and get quiet, and hopefully he'll gobble on his own. And if he's moved in my direction, then it's all just sheer focus after that. Yeah, I think here's the deal. And this is my friend Bob Dixon, God rest his soul. I heard a guy ask him this one time. He was a big contest caller. He was one of the original 3 or 4 of us down here at Mossy Oak. But I heard a guy ask him one time, he was talking about how much he loved hunting in the afternoons and seeing it. And he said, so if you had to pick daylight till noon or noon to dark, which would you hunt? He said, noon to dark, without a question, if I'm trying to kill a turkey. And he's right, because you're not going to hear anywhere near as much. But if you strike a turkey after that time, especially as the day's moving on, your odds of seeing him go way up, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't agree more. That's been my experience. The only time, back when I was in high school, et cetera, when turkeys just got reintroduced into Wisconsin, and we could finally hunt them, it seemed like more often than not, if you killed one, and you called it in and it didn't just happen to walk by, it was going to be sometime during that midday or afternoon. That was always the case.
Well, you stop and think, their windows to breed is very, very slim, and especially big old turkeys, those trophy type turkeys, those are a lot of those get snipped late in the season. So it's a very unique, to me, it's the most epic hunt on the planet if you really get into it and do it right. And I've been a lot of places. To me, it's just epic. And it's because we get to do it in the good old USA. I don't have to go to Africa or anywhere else. And it's so much back and forth and thinking, and you're trying to outsmart something that's literally got the brain the size of a pea, but it's a fascinating event to me to sit down there and do it with a call, not throw a pile of milo or corn out there and ambush them. It's just to trick them on their own territory. That's pretty cool.
I'm even thinking, just for our application, we're always like, when Eddie comes down, that's my big serious turkey hunt of the year, but we usually hunt out of ground blind because of filming and stuff. But for us, it'd be better to almost hunt first right at first light, right on a field edge or as close to the roost as we know. And then mid-morning switch spots and try calling from a different location just to at least try to move around a bit.
Yeah, go out there to the roost. Don't say a word. Try to find two, have a plan B, and try to figure out which way they went. And then that's your attack plan. You say, they're coming flying down right here. Well, they're going this way. Yep. Well, that's where you want to be sitting. If they get away from you, hey, man, go to the Waffle House. Steal some time.
That's what I'm talking about.
Ease back out there about 9:30 and start over again. To me, that's the thrill of the hunts at 9:30, 10 o'clock. Easing through there, trying to glass and look and okay. And I ain't talking about walking through the woods making loud calls. I like when I ease up to a spot, I'm looking around. So, all right, if I make one gobble here and he's fairly close, do I have a spot to sit up? Because people confuse locating with calling. The only reason you're calling is to locate. But if he gobbles and he's a couple of 100 yards away, well, you may be pinned down. So before I do that, first off, I'm easing through at a snail's pace, and I'm looking going, man, there's a great place to sit down right there. All right, I'm going to hit it. Pap, pap. Maybe do it twice, keep on easing down through there. So, have a spot picked out to do it. But to me, that 9:30 to noon, to me, that's kind of magic.
Everybody talks about the calls and there's 100 gimmicks, whether it's turkey hunting, elk hunting, deer hunting, whatever the case may be. And I have a friend who ran the circuit with turkey calling, and we've had him on the show, and we'll have him on the show again. And he makes some great mouth calls, but I've heard you, and I don't want to take away from anybody that's using a mouth call. I've heard you reference this tube call. Just so we're clear, are you talking about like a wing bone call?
No, that's a trumpet. That would fall into the trumpet category. Wing bone is a trumpet where you inhale. You're sucking in on it. A tube call is like a snuff can with a piece of latex stretched over it. I got one. It's a Primos call. And it doesn't make the most realistic yelp in the world. It's just really, really loud. And I generally just cut on it. A couple of notes. Bam, bam. It echoes and carries. But, I can tell you, as much as I love that thing, and as much as I've used it, and as great as it's been, my goal is to not have to touch it. If I'm using that tube call a lot, that means I ain't hearing anything. So the calling part of it, to me, is very, very overrated. Those subtle, once you get set in good and the turkey's answered you, it's those subtle things usually, unless it's that God love him 2-year-old kamikaze that's gotten away from the long beard and he's literally going to run over you. That loud calling doesn't do a whole lot for your success. It's usually those subtle things, scratching in the leaves. And if you watch a hen, they have a rhythm when they do that. They'll scratch with that right foot twice and then the left foot once, like that. Scratching in the leaves, little clucks and purrs, that's what actually usually closes the deal for you, especially if one's out there strutting. Because, again, and it's cliche, but we're reversing nature. 9 times out of 10, the hen goes to the gobbler. That's why he struts. That's why he drums. That's why he makes that noise when he's drumming. He's calling. So to get one to actually come in, you're trying to reverse everything. So the loud locator call is, for me, strictly for that. Okay, I made him give away his location. Check that box. Now I'm going to move in and I'm going to start doing something else.
What is the something else?
But something else just depends. Will Primo says he coined the phrase taking his temperature. If he's answering everything you do, and a lot of times you'll hear a guy say he's cutting me off, which means when I start to call, he gobbles. A lot of times that's a fairly good sign, but I at some point want to know in my mind that he's made ground toward me. If he's just standing there gobbling his head off, it may just be because he's literally so horny that he can't stand it. But if he ain't moving toward me, that's not a confident thing. But if I know he gobbled at that point, now he's down at the bottom of that hill or he's crossed the creek, I'm getting really quiet then. I may be scratching in the leaves, maybe clucking. I don't want to make any mistakes or anything, but trust me, the first time you made a sound, he knows exactly where you're at. So most of the time, calling too much is a bad thing. Calling too little is a good thing. It's just, are you convinced he's moving your way? If he's moving your way, you probably just need to shut up, kind of get pointed in that direction.
Okay. That I guess that makes complete sense.
That's a definitely good.
Yeah, really good tip.
It's the same thing with the whitetails. If you got a whitetail if you got a giant buck heading your direction, you don't start rattling at him.
No, it's nobody. There is no absolutes. I've seen some of the craziest things happen, but generally, if he turns, unless there's some kind of obstacle in the way, a fence or a big creek or ravine or something, generally, if he starts making his way your direction, he'll finish the trip. And that's when, okay, you got to decide, did I set in a good place? I certainly don't want him to see my hands. A lot of people worry about hiding behind something. I'm always worried. I don't mind sitting with nothing in front of me if I got a little back cover, which is kind of a dying art, because now people use ground blinds and decoys and stuff. But if a turkey can see past and beyond behind you for 100 yards or 200 yards and he doesn't see a hen, that's just the perfect scenario for him to hang up, as they say. So I always like to pick a spot where it'd be kind of difficult for him to see what's behind me, if possible.
Yep. That's always a good point too. Something I don't think about either enough with turkey hunting.
Yeah. Well, it's Jason, it's a different deal. I'm telling you, to me, it's the greatest hunt on the planet, but it's not that much more reserved it's different from deer hunting. They can't smell. If they could smell like a whitetail, you would never kill one in your wildest dreams. It would be like hunting a unicorn. But since they don't, and since it's springtime, and guys who don't go turkey hunting, they miss a lot. I mean, the woods are different during the spring. Everything's waking up. It's a different bird singing first. It's just the most wonderful time ever to be outdoors.
Just the flowers blooming, the sounds and smells are, I mean, you bring me right there, and that's half of it. Just getting out there. Once you're out there, you're like, holy cow, I'm so glad I came, because there's a lot of mornings I don't necessarily like getting up, but boy, once you get up there and you listen to the woods wake up, like you said, it's just a different time of year, and it's a beautiful time of year to be out there. And not only that, for the whitetail hunters, the entire time you're out turkey hunting, you're moving in and out of different areas. You're looking at maybe even finding some old sheds that you might have missed the season before. There's still plenty of scouting that you can do for whitetails as well along the way. So it's not just, I'm not anyway. I'm always looking at deer hunting related stuff. I really am, but it is a gorgeous time to be out there.
It is. I mean, it's great to see trails. You can see stuff. And, a turkey will make me personally, and again, we're different down here, but I will do things to get to a turkey that I would never do to get to a deer, because I'm like, at some point that deer's coming out this way. But if a turkey's gobbling 2 ravines over and there's a 6-foot creek in between me and him, and I'm on it. I got my wallet in my mouth. I'm wading that creek with my gun over my head. I would never do that for a deer, but I'll do it for a turkey any day.
Well, thank you so much, Cuz, for coming on our show today. We've definitely covered a lot of random things like we always do, but it's always a great time getting to hear some stories from past season, and it gets me excited for turkey season, I can tell you that much.
Well, it's an honor to be on here with you guys. It's a new day. Back when I did PR, it was all print media. It was magazines and stuff. And now we depend on guys like you to keep the word going. So that's a great task, and you guys do a wonderful job, and I'm honored to be on here.
Well, we're honored to have you. You're an icon in the industry, and you've been around a long time, and you in my opinion, you've done it right. I've enjoyed watching the shows, especially the ones in Wisconsin. But I've enjoyed watching all the shows. What new have you got going on? I know last year we talked a little bit, if we can get just a couple more minutes of your time before we let you go. I know you were involved and still are involved with S.O.L.E. That's Sportsmen Organized for Law Enforcement. Is there anything new going on with that?
We to this point, I've refused to turn it into a 501(c) thing, because every penny we've raised, I'm able to give to the 3 groups we're working with, which is Spirit of Blue, Cops, and Below 100. We raised about $60,000 last year. I got 3 events lined up this year, and my goal is $100,000, which is in the scheme of things, is not a fortune, but it's a ton of money to those 3 groups because they don't budget for it. And I'm getting it keyed up to where there's more people involved. The issue is everybody that calls wanting to donate is usually in law enforcement. And I tell them, God bless you, but I don't want your money. I want everybody else's money so we can buy tourniquets and body armor and stuff like that. But yes, I got 3 big events. The golf tournament we had down here for Mossy Oak Properties at the new Mossy Oak Golf Tournament last year, raised $20-something thousand for S.O.L.E.
Oh, wow.
And more than that for St. Jude. So we're kind of taking it up another level. I got 2 more auction hunts I'm going to do, so it's going great. I'm going to get it to a big-time national level. I ain't able to do it with a full-time job, but I've got it teed up along with our great governor, Phil Bryant, he's in his second term. He wants to work on it. So I'd say it's very healthy on the vine, and looking forward to growing that every chance we get. And thank you so much for asking.
Well, it's something that's near and dear to me. Although I've been in the car business for 27 years, I spent my education, to be in law enforcement. I guess I could never get off the dope of the car business, so to speak. So my wife works in law enforcement. It's something that, yes, our troops are super important, and I don't want to take anything away from them, but especially in today's day and age, our law enforcement people don't get enough love. And I'm happy to see that you're doing it. Just a question: if we wanted to get involved, and just any of the listeners wanted to get involved, is there a way that they can do that, or is just geographically that's not possible unless you're in Cub's neighborhood?
No, we have a great Facebook. It's S.O.L.E. S.O.L.E. America, and you can get it on Facebook. We have a little website, and there's a donate button there. All the money goes to a company in Tupelo, Mississippi called the Create Foundation. Every dime goes in there, and they hold it for 60 days, and then they split that money between the 3 groups. And any charges for handling that money, Mossy Oak pays it. So, yeah, there's a donate button on the S.O.L.E. America Facebook and website. And thank you again for asking and bringing that up.
Well, and I just want to make sure that everyone understands that those 3 organizations that are under the umbrella of S.O.L.E. are the real deal. They get equipment to the folks on the front line, so to speak. So your money's definitely going to go to help a great cause.
Yeah, every cent of it too. That's something we're really proud of, and like I say, down the road, I'm going to try to grow that way big. But right now, they're pretty proud. Mossy Oak, everybody's pretty proud that whatever goes into that account, 100% of it goes to one of those 3 groups, and they're great people. I've had all 3 of the kind of CEOs for those things down here who are all volunteers, and it's humbling to be around those people. We still do tons of stuff with the military. I'm going to spend my first 8 days of Florida turkey season with wounded veterans, and God bless them. It's humbling, but there's so many groups helping them, very few helping law enforcement. That's why we decided to do this.
Good for you. That's great.
Well, God bless
yes,
you
sir.
For doing it. Absolutely. Yes. We love it. Any men in black, any men in blue, anybody, firefighters, all these people are out there risking their lives every single day for all of us. And like Jason said, seems like lately they're made out to be the bad guy when, boy, if you could only know what a year in the life of one of these people are out there in the field dealing with what they deal with. It's not something that most people have to deal with, but thank God that we have that group of brave souls that are out there doing the dirty work for the rest of us.
Amen. Well, I appreciate you guys getting the word out. Every little bit helps. I do a lot of it on my social media, but I'm telling you, every time somebody hears about it, they make a little donation, and that's how you build it, man, $1 at a time. So thank you guys for caring and for doing the podcast and letting me be a small part of it.
Well, we appreciate having you, and we will definitely put a link to the Facebook page for S.O.L.E., as well as anything else that we've talked about. We'll try and direct them in the right direction. But thanks again for taking the time to be with us. Todd, any final thoughts?
No, just have a great spring season, and let us know if there's any way we can help promote anything you're doing with our service people. We would love to be a part of it.
Sounds good. You guys have a great spring. I'm right here anytime you need.
Well, there you have it. Our interview with Mr. Cuz Strickland. Thanks so much, Cuz, for taking the time to sit down and talk with Todd and I about turkey hunting and try and educate a couple of guys that really don't know a whole lot of anything about turkey hunting. But as always, it was educational and fun. Hey, also, if you want to check in on what's going on with S.O.L E, we'll post a link to their website so you're able to get to that. That's S.O.L E, S-O-L-E, Sportsmen Organized for Law Enforcement. If you have a particular question about that, you can certainly reach out to me or Todd, Jason at whiteknuckleproductions.com or Todd at whiteknuckleproductions.com, and we can get you to the right person if you want to help out that organization whatsoever. With that, we're going to close out the show today. We want to thank our sponsors, Ozonics. Without them, we can't do this show. We also want you to know that we have a special deal going on with Ozonics right now. All you need to do is go to Ozonics website, www.ozonicshunting.com/WKP, and you'll get the special White Knuckle Productions discount. Now, I also want to tell you that Ozonics is manufacturer ship direct. What does that mean for you? It means that the only way to buy an Ozonics machine is right from the folks that made it. And there's a benefit to that. We worked the deer and turkey expos here over the course of the winter, and we got to see the amazing deals that they were giving customers. So throughout the year, we'll have deals posted on our web shows and our podcasts. Again, that's www.ozonicshunting.com/WKP. I think that's all I've got for today. Jason out.